Hi, everyone. Welcome to Making It Real. Today on the show, we have Vicky Shilling. Vicky, thanks so much for joining us.
That's a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And Vicky has a really interesting topic and presentation prepared for us, which I'm really looking forward to diving in. But first, before I announce what it is, I just want to give you a little bit of a background on Vicky. I found her on Instagram. Her content and her videos were just so engaging and really, I could really relate to a lot of them. And I feel like you listeners will probably feel the same. So she is a wellness entrepreneur coach, and she helps people start as well as grow wellness businesses. And so her clients include nutritionists, yoga teachers, personal trainers, health coaches, and really anyone looking to build a career for themselves out of their passion for wellness. So Vicky has an awesome accent because she's based in Dublin, and she works with clients through one-on-one coaching, online masterclasses, and a thriving community of health-based business owners. So without further ado, Vicky, I'm going to announce the topic because you gave me quite a few options and they were all amazing, but you talked about how to conquer imposter syndrome in the world of wellness. And I feel like that's just gonna hit people at their heart. So without further ado, I will pass it over to you. I'm so looking forward.
Thank you. Yeah, and I'm really glad you picked this one because it's something that I tackle a lot with a lot of my clients. So what I thought I'd do is I'll do a little share screen of like how we can look at imposter syndrome and how it sort of shows up in slightly different ways for each of us, and then how we can actually tackle it, because I'm all about like sort of practicalities of how do we do this and how do we actually conquer it ourselves. Perfect. So let me just share now. And just to explain for anyone who is confused, I am actually British, but I live in Dublin, so I don't have a lovely sexy Irish accent, but I've just got an English one instead.
I should know that. I'm half British, so I should be able to decipher the difference. Yeah.
Great. So can you see that clearly?
Yes, beautiful.
Perfect. So little bit about me. You've obviously explained. What I do is help specifically people setting up their wellness businesses, starting often and growing. And so imposter complex comes up for a lot of people, and it comes up in a lot of different ways, and it kind of can disguise itself. So I'd love to know, Kiki, if you experience any of these thoughts or any of these feelings, or if you think any of these actually come up for other people that you talk to. So there's 5 different types that the kind of research has been done around this imposter complex kind of separates out how we think about ourselves as imposters. And I'm going to go through each one. So we've got like the expert, the soloist, the natural genius, the superwoman, and the perfectionist, which I'm sure is going to resonate with quite a few people. So let's look at the expert first. This is definitely one that I can relate to myself. So if you have this sort of expert style of imposter complex, you feel like you should know everything already. Like, why the hell do I not just know this? Like, I am obviously useless because I'm not an expert. You're always looking at other people and you're like, well, clearly they know what they're doing. So obviously I'm rubbish. Obviously I have no idea what I'm doing. And you never think that what you know now is enough. Does this sound familiar?
Oh my God, totally. And then when people do call you an expert, you feel so guilty.
Yeah. No, of course that's not me. No, they're an expert on that. Like, not me. Like, don't keep looking at me. You'll see through it and you'll realize I'm not an expert at all. So that's the first version. The second version is the soloists. So this is this whole idea that we can just do it by ourselves. I'm super intelligent. I can work this out. Like, I don't need any help. And obviously if I ask for help, then clearly I'm not good at this and I'm just a total fraud. So if you have got help with something and then someone says, oh, that was really good, and you go, well, that's only because someone helped me. It's not because I'm actually any good myself.
Absolutely.
Third type then, that natural genius. I think that kind of plays into what we've said a little bit before, but this idea of like, it should just come naturally, it should just come easily. I should just be able to do this. It shouldn't feel hard, it shouldn't feel like I should have to work at it. I shouldn't be struggling at this, and obviously if I'm struggling, then I must be totally useless and I should give up. This is obviously not my calling, it's not what I'm meant to be doing. Fourth type then, that superwoman style. You feel like you should be able to excel at everything that you take on. And for me, this shows up quite a bit because I was quite academic at school. You know, I was always A grades and top of the class. I went to a sort of filtered grammar school where we were always told you're in the top 5% of the, you know, the country, you're super intelligent. So when things don't work in my business or I'm really struggling with things, I'm going, why? Like this, I'm obviously then must be rubbish at this, because I'm always the best at things, and now I'm not always the best at things. I must be an imposter. I must be faking it. I must not be meant to be here. And the fifth type then, which I do think comes up a lot and shows up for a lot of people, is the idea of perfection. We're always setting ourselves these like crazy impossible standards, the way we should be reaching things, and if we don't reach that crazy high standard, which is virtually impossible to do, we're not going to do it. We're obviously totally useless unless it's absolutely perfect and we've tweaked it and perfected it and looked back at it and done it again and again and again. It's not going anywhere. It's not going out there, because otherwise someone is going to catch me. They're going to realize that I'm total imposter at this, and I'm going to get caught out. Does that resonate as well?
Oh my God, totally. It's so funny how, yes, all of these thoughts can go in your brain and they're totally normal when they're just in your head. But then hearing you speak them and hearing the actual dialogue that we tell ourselves is just like, obviously this is bogus. Like, you know, we can't be, as you say, perfect and all these things. So it's just being aware of it, I would assume, can really help.
That's it. Yeah. And being aware of our thoughts rather than, I think, like you said, so for me as a coach, when I work with people one-to-one, sometimes I encourage them to actually say these things out loud. And when they say it out loud, it's really powerful, because they go, oh my God, I know that's crazy. Now I've said that out loud, I realize how completely irrational that is. Or I know that the real way to do this is to practice, and I'm not going to be good straight away. And I'm, you know, all of this kind of stuff. But sometimes we get so caught up in our head that we don't say it out loud or extrapolate it or journal it or whatever, like get it out of our systems and realize and rationalize it a bit more, so that it stops getting in our way and stops becoming like this big, you know, block for us. That means we don't take any action and we don't do anything because we just think we're going to get found out. We're obviously no good at this.
And may I ask, is it usually with your clients, do they usually resonate with one in particular, like as a focus, and you kind of double down on that? Or is it more so that generally speaking, we all kind of have a little bit of all five and it's finding, you know, which ones to target most? I
tend to find it comes up for people in different ways, and sometimes if they've managed to quieten down one, another one pops up. It's like this, that inner critic has this amazing like metamorphizing ability, and that once you've worked out, you're like, I know how to control this one, it pops up in a different way. So I do find it shows up, and I do have to keep reminding people, like, you remember we talked about this and we managed to quieten that down, right? Now it's coming out like this. Can you hear what you're now saying? And it's just another way. So I do find people tend to, and I certainly, with those 5 descriptions, can relate to a few of them and see where it shows up slightly differently. So yeah, it's about having, and the 5 steps I'll go through now are better at certain aspects of it, but some of them are quite kind of universal that we all need to accept and embrace.
Oh, I can't wait for these steps. Yeah.
Cool. So this is what I'm all about. It's the practical, like, how do we actually get rid of this and how do we stop thinking like this all the time? So again, I've gone with 5 tips here. Firstly, normalizing these feelings, and we'll go into a bit more depth in all of these. Secondly, you know, like we were saying, like these are thoughts and things in our head, like reframing those things that are coming up and the things we're saying to ourselves. Thirdly, getting comfortable with criticism, and that's like, it feels really, really awkward, especially for people that have imposter syndrome. keep going, and we'll look at like, how do we do that? How do we keep showing up, and how do we keep like busting through this all the time? And finally, being kind to ourselves rather than beating ourselves up about it, and feeling sort of shame or guilt and all of those things that can come with quite negative thoughts. So this first one for me, I think, is a kind of universal, because however your imposter complex shows up, this idea that this is normal. Like, you're not alone feeling like this. Like, you and I have already said we feel like this. I see clients pretty much every day who show versions of this. You're not alone. Research suggests that 70% of people that were surveyed say they feel on a regular basis this kind of nagging sense of being an imposter, being caught out, not meant to be here, this isn't my thing, which is quite a lot of people if we were to, you know, spread that out across everyone working in wellness. So yeah, that fear and doubt is totally normal. And actually, I certainly don't think in my life and the way I coach clients that we're ever going to completely eliminate it. Like we were saying, it's like whack-a-mole. If you whack one version of it, it'll pop back up somewhere else. That we have to learn to spot the thoughts, like you were saying, like learn to listen and observe it and go, oh, that's what I'm thinking right now, and learn these techniques of how to kind of talk ourselves down and away from it. So I'd put sort of mantras for each of these, but kind of ways to think about it and things that we need to be saying to ourselves instead. Like, this is a really powerful one, actually. It came from a podcast with someone called Tanya Geisler. She's an imposter syndrome expert. I'll share the link with you afterwards. It's a brilliant podcast about imposter complex, and she came up with this phrase that I actually have pop up on my phone now. Real imposters don't feel like imposters. Like, if you were generally diddling someone, if you were generally like screwing someone out of something, you would not even for a second think that you're an imposter. You would just be doing it. You'd just be like, this is just what I do. Real imposters actually have not real imposters, people that feel imposter syndrome actually have a real high integrity. Like, we're actually like really have high standards for ourselves, you know, where the perfectionism shows up. And actually, if we're feeling that means we're a good person and we want to be doing well in the world rather than screwing someone over. So really reminding ourselves, like, this is normal. This is okay to feel like this way. It's normal, and you know, I am capable of overcoming this. So I think this kind of, this normalizing is really important.
Yeah, it's interesting because I was having a conversation with a sales coach the other day, and she was saying how she noticed that her top clients in terms of intelligence and like what they actually have to offer are often the ones that are the most insecure about raising their prices. And I think it's similar to what you're talking about here. You know, it's when we feel like we're, oh my God, we can't be here, when, you know, we're not meant to be doing this or whatever, it might actually be because we have such high standards for ourselves. And that's in a way a good sign. So
I know. And sometimes I do think, God, what I wouldn't give to like drop 5% intelligence and trade that for like 5% just gung-ho. I'm just doing this, I'm just putting it out there. Because you're absolutely right. I do find the people that are the most highly intelligent and want to keep qualifying and getting all these expert you know, qualifications and be brilliant also have that huge hanging sense over them, like, oh, I'm still not good enough and this isn't quite right and I'm worried what people will think, and all of those thoughts that come with it. And we have to accept those, but work to overcome them so that we can get out there and put ourselves out there, just like people that don't seem to have this, you know, the 30% of people that don't seem to have this problem.
Yeah.
So yeah, starting off with that, normalizing, this is normal, this is what other people experience. Then we were talking about that reframing of the negative thoughts. So I am very much a firm believer in this idea that our thoughts will control our feelings. So if we can control our thoughts a little bit more and take a bit more responsibility for, like, what am I actually thinking here? What's the thought process here? We can then change how we feel, which then changes what we show up and what we do. So if we're thinking, I'm an imposter, I'm not good enough, that, you know, I can't do this. How do we feel? We feel useless. We feel utterly, you know, dejected. Nothing's going to work. There's no point in doing anything. And then what does the result happen? You know, what's the action as a result of that? Well, we don't do anything. We don't put ourselves out there. We don't give it a go. We don't, you know, try. And then what's the evidence? The evidence is we don't have a business. We're not good enough. And then all that does is just reaffirm that thought that we aren't good enough. And we just keep going through that cycle. So we really have to take control of that thought and reprogram that thought and change those negative things into positives. So I've put an example here, like, oh my God, I've got no idea what I'm doing. Like trying to catch that thought and go, wow, there's loads to learn here. Like there's loads I want to learn. You're laughing. Tell me why you're laughing.
No, it's just because I so resonate with that as well. And it's like, yeah, in a way, there's, you know, the universe is our oyster, and it's, everything is abundant, and there's so much we don't know. And so rather than just kind of framing it, as you say, as, oh God, I should know that, it's like, oh great, I have an opportunity to learn something new. Like,
that's exactly it. I had a conversation with two friends about exactly this, and they said, you know, how do you cope with this idea that you're never like there? You never know everything. And I was like, do you know what? I love that. Like I've learned to reframe it, and rather than going, oh God, I'll never feel like I know everything, I've switched that in my mind to, isn't it cool? There's just always more stuff to learn. And like, we have to do that for our own, like, to keep going, to keep showing up for our own, like, mental preservation. We can't live, like you were saying, that in that scarcity idea of like, I'll never know everything, so therefore I shouldn't start. But, you know, that's just going to sabotage us. Brilliant. So that whole idea of I'm always learning is really helpful for people, perfectionists, people that won't put things out if they're a perfectionist. You know, this idea of I'm going to put it out and I'm going to learn something from it. And certainly that idea of people that think they should be experts all the time. It's like, no one's ever an expert. No one ever knows everything. I am always learning. There's always more to learn. Right, the criticism thing. It's really hard for a lot of people. So, and I have put constructive criticism in here because no one needs negative criticism just for the sake of it. You know, criticism where it's asked for and where we've asked for feedback is what I'm talking about here when I'm talking about criticism. I'm not saying we should all just open up our DMs to people just slagging us off, which is not helpful for anybody's imposter complex. But we need, again, it's this kind of reframing version. We need to see that criticism and that feedback as a gift, as something that actually we actively seek out. And if we're going to do something, if we're going to put out a program or a product or a service or a, you know, social media post or whatever it is, that we actually go and find a couple of people that we really value their feedback and say, can you give me some feedback on, you know, I'd love to know what you really think about that. And to see what they say and how they feed back to us as an opportunity to learn again, like what else can I learn about doing this, and embrace that feedback as part of the process, rather than keep doing something and not asking and not getting that help and that support. So yeah, like I've put a sort of mantra, not necessarily a mantra, but whenever we do something, to always think, who can I ask? What's one thing I could have done better? Where can I get some support here? And seeing that as a positive rather than a negative thing. So I've said this is really great for those soloists, those people that are like, I should be able to do this all on my own. Like those soloists and those expert people, like I should just know this. And the natural geniuses as well, that like I should just know it thing. Like this is really helpful. Like actually, I need help, and I need to ask for help, and I need to get better and need to learn. How can I go and do that? How can I go and seek out that support?
Totally. This is actually quite timely because I was just having a conversation with my colleague around doing these videos and this podcast, and he suggested, he's a coach as well, and he said, you know, at the end of every interview, I want you to ask the person, what could I have done better? And I was like, I hope you don't mean online. He was like, fine, you can ask them afterwards, like, you know, privately. But yeah, and I think that definitely resonates and can be applied to our wellness practitioners, you know, running a program, making sure that you're getting feedback. And, you know, we always love great testimonials we can stick on our website, but what about actually speaking one-on-one with the client and being like, you know, what didn't work here? How could I have made this better for next time? So
yeah, totally. And like you said, like we don't have to do that in a public arena. We can find a way that feels comfortable for us. So I always send a survey to people at the end of working with me, and I always ask that, you know, what's one thing I could have done better, or how could I have been a better coach for you? And I need to be open and receptive, because that will improve me as a coach. That will make me better. And you're right, always looking for ways to ask and to not shy away from it. I run a series of retreats, and with another person, she's a nutritional therapist, and she finds the criticism and the feedback really, really difficult. And I have to keep saying, but we have to send these surveys after our retreats, and we have to ask, because if we're going to improve each time, we have to know what worked and went well. Like you say, we love a testimonial, but we also need to know where we can make tweaks and get better, because we'll only get better by doing that, rather than like hiding from it all the time.
exactly.
Great. Fourth one then, keep going. And this is so important. We've said this idea about how do we keep showing up for it, like really taking responsibility and setting ourselves those stretch goals, getting outside of our comfort zone, doing things that scare us even a little bit, whilst remembering to like normalize that this is normal. This is just how this is how other people feel as well. I'm not alone in doing this. I'm reframing those negative thoughts. And I think the important thing with the keep going thing is, like, someone might be watching this training and be like, great, okay, I've decided I'm no longer going to have imposter complex, and like click, it will just go away. Like, it doesn't work like that at all. And like I said, it's like the whack-a-mole thing. It's going to keep showing up for you, and you have to keep practicing. Like, you have to just keep working at it. You have to keep reframing those thoughts, realizing it's normal, practicing and getting feedback, all of those things. We have to keep doing that and showing up for it every single day. And it's only through that consistent practice that we're going to get better at conquering it quicker. So this real idea of like, my actions always move me forward. Feel the fear, do it anyway, keep moving forward. And this is really helpful for those perfectionists that get paralyzed by, oh God, I can't do it, it's not perfect yet. And those natural geniuses of, I should already know how to do this. Like, just keep going, just keep showing up.
And I like how you're addressing how there's just becoming comfortable with being uncomfortable sometimes. I think just the awareness of, okay, like sometimes it's not going to feel super easy, or I'm going to feel outside of my comfort zone, but addressing that from the outright can kind of help it while you're in it, right? So, and then you can just kind of accept it versus making it worse by going through, oh my God, this feels so uncomfortable, I don't want to be doing this.
Yeah, I don't know if any of your listeners follow Brooke Castillo at the Life Coach School. She has this brilliant phrase, which is, discomfort is the path to your dreams. And it is this real idea that we have to embrace that discomfort. And even if it feels a little bit awkward and doesn't sit right with us, we need to push through that. Even just a small percentage, what tiny little thing can I keep doing to push through that each day? Because the other side of that is where the magic happens.
Yeah.
Cool. And then finally, this is so important, and certainly all of us in the wellness industry know this as well, like shame and, you know, making ourselves feel bad and beating ourselves up and hating ourselves is never, ever going to be the answer to conquering this. So we've got to step away and like notice where we're having those thoughts, like, I'm such a bad person for feeling like this, or I'm so useless, you know, that cycle of like, I'm rubbish because I feel like this. We've got to neutralize that. At the very least, we need to neutralize it and just take that kind of vocabulary and those kind of things out of what we're saying to ourselves in our head. We would never say that to another person, so we certainly need to stop saying it inside our heads, and start viewing, like, you know what we were saying, like to view those thoughts and those feelings just with like curiosity, like we do through meditation and mindfulness. If people are familiar with that, you're not angry about your thoughts and you're not caught up in your thoughts. You're just observing them. You're just like, oh, that's interesting, that's popped up again. Like, I'm just curious about that. I'm just like, where did that come from, and what's happened, and what's the scenario here, and how could I change that, or how can I neutralize that, and not being angry and frustrated about it. So I've put in there that kind of mantra, like we were talking about before, this idea, like, my imposter complex means I have high integrity, I'm a good person, I'm doing my best. Like, trying to be kind to ourselves all the time, rather than sort of self-deprecating and you know, self-flagellating about these things, because they are normal and we are capable of overcoming them.
Love it. Such
cool. That's it. Did you have any other questions about imposter syndrome and anything else? That's just a little bit about me and where most people can find me if they want to come find me online.
Yes, that you shared that. That was a wonderful presentation, so thank you. I guess in close, I'd love to hear more about your specific offerings for those watching, but maybe my last question can simply be, how long does this usually take? When you're coaching clients, it's like, I know that we all want a quick fix and all that jazz, but is this like a process that you find, like when do you find things really, the results are working and there's a shift in that mindset? And how often do people need to be really mindful and conscious about doing this in order to really get those juicy results?
Yeah. I'm going to say the typical answer, which is it totally depends on you and how ingrained these things really are. I also think it probably is a process that won't ever necessarily stop, but that the more we practice and we do these things, like you were saying, like how often should we be doing it? Constantly, every day, every little thing. It's just catching those thoughts, and that's where for me the mindfulness and meditation come in, because that in a practice in itself is observing your thoughts and not being critical of them, so that we can in our everyday life be walking down the street and some imposter complex thought pops into our head, I'm not good enough, or that won't work, or this isn't, I'm going to get caught out, and we just observe it. We can stand back and go, oh, hold on a minute, that's just popped into my head. What can I do about that? What is the mantra Vicky reminded me of? What process can I put in here? So I do think it's a continual journey. For some people, it might be that one of the things that I've said there and the way I've said it might click and be like, right, that's it. That's like, I was going to smash that down every time it comes in. It might come really quickly like that. Also, talking to someone and saying it out loud or writing it down might just have that real impact for people, and to just be like, do you know what? That's it. Like, I'm done. I do not tolerate that in my thought process anymore. So it can be quick, but I think sometimes it can be an ongoing process. And
I was just going to say that leads perfectly into, and that's one of the main benefits of working with a coach and having someone hold yourself.
Because it's a mirror constantly. When I talk to clients and I repeat back to them those phrases and those stories they're telling themselves and the things they're saying, and I say, can you hear yourself? You've just said this. You've just said, I'm not good enough, or this won't be, this won't work, or I can't do this, or so and so will find me out, or I'm scared of judgment. Can you see what's going on here? And that is a real moment of self-realization. And you're right, like that's why I always encourage anyone at any stage in their business to work with a coach, because it helps you see those thought patterns a lot quicker than you can do it just on your own in your own head.
Perfect. So what's the first step? How can people sort of get in touch with you and learn more about your offerings?
Best way is through my website, so that's vickyshilling.com, or I'm most active over on Instagram, so that's vicky.shilling. Come and drop into my direct messages, pop a comment on one of my posts, and I'd love to chat, love to hear more about you.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that, Vicky. Really appreciate it.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So soon. Bye.